Hey, Rebecca here. Time to work on exercise 3, multiple copies. When you download this SketchUp model from D2L, don't forget that the very first thing you're going to do is a file, save as. We're going to save this to our desktop or wherever you are working on this file. So I'm going to change where it says last name to my last name and then hit save. All right. So first things first, what are we looking at? At the front here, you can see all these different objects to make multiple copies of. We're going to be working with copies and multiple copies. There is a difference, as we've talked about in class. You can see, maybe if you zoom in, you see a little better, we are going to be making some fencing in a gated area for the final project house that you will be working on later on in the semester. Back here is an image file of the completed fencing, and so this is what it should look like when you are done with this exercise. In order to complete exercise 3, you will need to use those scene tabs. If you remember from exercise 1, there were a bunch of scene tabs at the top where you had to click each one to find out what the instructions were. So, same thing. So we're starting on the overall view. This is what we're looking at right now. So we can go ahead and click steps 1 and 2. 1 is down here, 2 is right here, and then at the end of steps 1 and 2, there's just a little FYI. So let's start with step 1. Copy this column on the red axis. Select the column, activate the Move Copy command, click an endpoint on the column, move your mouse to the right, lock in the red axis, the right arrow key, select the same endpoint on the first column outline, the gray rectangle, to create a copy. Create a multiple copy by immediately typing 5x, then hit enter. You should have 4 copies of the column that line up perfectly with the column outlines. Orbit underneath each outline and zoom in to make sure they line up, and then save your model. So I want you, when you're going through each of these steps, I want you to read all of the steps through before actually beginning, okay? That will help you to know the means of the end, which is really important with SketchUp and pretty much anything else in life, but whatever. So copy this column on the red axis. We are first going to select that. We know that is our first step in our hierarchy of tools in SketchUp. Then we're going to activate the Move Copy command. I can go up here and click the icon for Move, which is those 4 arrows pointing in different directions. Or I can be a smart modeler and click M for Move. And we're going to watch our cursor for this next part. So when we are activating the Copy command, which as we know is tied to the Move command, which I won't even get into that one, how silly that is. But M for move, and then tap the control key for copy on Windows computer. On a Mac, I believe it's the command key. So our cursor, we're watching that to make sure it has that little plus sign in the lower right hand corner of the move command. That tells us that we are going to copy. Do you need to hold down the control key or the command key? No, you're just going to tap it. If I tap it again, then that copy portion of the move command goes away. So that's why we need to make sure that we're looking at our cursor, tap control again, and make sure that it has that little plus sign. All right, so now we are going to click an endpoint on the column. Please zoom in. A lot of people try to model away like this, and you're not grabbing exactly what you want to grab when you do that. So make sure that you zoom in. Now there's a little thing that happens when you are in the move command, even in the move copy command. So you can see that I get this little protractor looking thing. We want to make sure that that is not, oh dear, let's ignore that. I want to make sure that that is not lit up before we do our click. So just move your mouse a little until that protractor goes away. You can also make that protractor go away by zooming in. We definitely want to zoom in and see the exact endpoint that we are going to click when we are moving and copying and rotating and all of that good stuff. All right, so I'm going to click the bottom left-hand corner. I always click the bottom left-hand corner. You will see me do that a lot in class. That's how I always remember where I've clicked first, because we use a lot of reference points. So I'm going to click the bottom left-hand corner. Whichever corner that you choose, you need to remember it for the second part of this. So I'm going to click an endpoint. And then what's the next step? I can zoom out. Even in my command, I can still zoom out. And it says move my mouse to the right. Remember, we do that in our hierarchy of SketchUp maneuvers. So we tell SketchUp which way we're going to copy this bad boy. So I'm just going to move it to the right. And then I'm going to lock in my red access with the right arrow key. I'm going to click the same endpoint of the first column outline. That would be the gray rectangle. All around your model, you have these various gray rectangles. So that's what it means by the first column outline to create the copy. And then I'm going to create a multiple copy immediately, typing 5x, then hit enter. All right, so remember how I clicked the bottom left-hand corner of this column? Well, I need to click the bottom left-hand corner of this gray rectangle. Click, and then before I do anything else, don't orbit, don't zoom, don't click your modeling window. Before you do anything else, type in 5x. You can make sure, look at your VCB and make sure you did that. Indeed, we have. And then hit enter. So using that 5x, I have created multiple copies. If I had just done the steps, move, copy, click my endpoint, move to the right, right arrow to lock in my red access, and then clicked. Then gotten out of my command, hit the space bar, blah, blah, blah. Then I have created one copy. I have not created multiple copies. So to create multiple copies, there's two ways, as we discussed in class. And this way I have chosen to use the X command. So I still go through that first part, click, move, lock, click. But then I immediately type in how many multiple copies I want to make. That would be 5 times, or 5x. Hit enter. Space bar to get out of my command. And then I need to have 4 copies of the column that line up perfectly with the column outlines. Orbit underneath each outline and zoom in to make sure they line up. So I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to orbit underneath here. Sorry if you're getting sick here. Orbit underneath. And indeed, they do line up with that outline that I created. Yay! I click steps 1 and 2 again to take me back to where I was. Then it says save your model. So Control S. Can move on to step 2. All right. It says copy all 4 grouped objects at once. Select the aluminum slats. Hold down the Shift key and select the other aluminum slats, the aluminum vertical post, and the cubozoid of papers. Activate the Move Copy command. Click an endpoint to the left column as a reference. Move your mouse to the right. Now I left out a step because I wanted you to think through this. After I move my mouse to the right, what do I need to do? I need to lock in my access. So I'm going to lock in that red access. Click the same endpoint on the first column to the right to create a copy. Create multiple copies of all 4 objects at once by immediately typing 5x, then hit enter. Okay, so I need to pick up this slat of aluminum fencing. Then I'm going to hold down the Shift key and click this group. I'm going to still hold down my Shift key and click the vertical post. And then I'm going to, still holding down my Shift key, click the cubozoid of pavers. So I need to have all 4 grouped objects selected at once. All right, then I'm going to copy them so they're right next to this column, to the right of this column, just as all of these are to the right of this column. I'm going to activate my command, hit M for move, Control for copy. Does my cursor have that little plus sign? Indeed it does. I'm going to click bottom left-hand corner, lift up my clicker, move my mouse to the right, lock in that red axis, and then click that same endpoint on the column. Now, am I creating one copy or multiple copies? Creating multiple copies. So I'm going to type in a multiple copy command. We do that, remember, before we do anything else. We don't hit the space bar, we don't click the modeling window, we don't orbit. We're going to type in 5x and hit enter. And space bar to get out of my command. I can zoom out either by clicking or scrolling my scroll wheel here, or I can also click zoom extents. Remember that guy? We can zoom extents to see everything in our model. Then we're going to have to zoom back in. I can see, sure enough, I have made 5 copies of my original. And then here's that little FYI. When you're done copying, there will be an open space right here. We'll fix this gap in step 7. So let's make sure we save at this point. Save. And we can move on to step 3. So we'll click the step 3 scene tab, and we are whisked magically away to step 3. All right, make multiple copies on this side of the fence. Use a bounding box to select all 5 grouped objects. 2 sets of aluminum horizontal slats, vertical gray slat, column, and cubozoid of pavers. Activate the copy tool, move plus control. Click on far left endpoint of the cubozoid, so that would be over here. Move your mouse to the left this time and lock in the green axis using our left arrow key. Click your mouse on the column at the end of the row. Oh, so we're going to go all the way over here. And we're going to click this column. Sorry, I was going to read the same step. Immediately type 5/ and hit enter on the keyboard. So we're working with the second way to create multiple copies. You should have 5 copies of all 5 objects. Double check the column copies line up with the column markers. Alrighty-tighty. So first thing we need to do is use a bounding box to get everything that we're going to copy. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and then I've got to orbit so I get just what I want to select. Now there's more than one way to select all of these objects. Remember, as we did last time, I can click this one, then hold down the shift key and select the 4 additional groupings. But my little notes here say that I need to use a bounding box. So I'm having you practice with bounding boxes. I can do 2 different bounding boxes. I can do right to left, and I can do left to right. I'm going to save a little time and just do left to right. So I'm going to start a little bit ways over here so I can capture everything. Click and hold your clicker this time and move and grab just a little piece of all 5 groupings. Remember, that's what you do with the left to right. Right to left. I think I forgot my right and left for a second. We're going right to left. So we just need a little grouping, a little piece from each grouping on our right to left crossing window. So I've got them all in my bounding box. I'm going to let go. I can see that all of them have been highlighted. Now, if you accidentally picked up part of the text, you can redo that. Or, remember, if you get too much, you can hold down the shift key and select or deselect, as it were, what you do not want. Don't forget that one. All right. So now we are going to activate the copy tool. So M for move, control for copy. Click on the far left endpoint. Move your mouse to the left and lock in the green axis with the left arrow key. And then I'm going to click my mouse on the column at the end of the row. So I'm going to pan over here. This is one reason why I want you to get used to using the shortcut commands with the scroll wheel rather than coming up here and clicking pan and using pan to get over, because then we would have to restart with our bounding boxes and selecting everything that we want to use. But we have our awesome scroll wheel and holding down the shift key to pan. And so we don't have to get out of our move copy command, right? So then I'm going to come over here and click this endpoint. Don't be afraid to zoom in so you make sure you're clicking exactly where you want to click. Click. Before you do anything else, we need to do our multiple copy command. So 5/, and that would be the / that's next to the right shift key on your keyboard, underneath enter, and then hit enter. Spacebar to get out of my command. Then I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Sure enough, that worked. So we're going to save. And then we can go on to step 4. Oh, we didn't double check the column copies line up with the column markers. Let's do that. Let's be better modelers. So I'm going to orbit underneath. Looks like they line up. That one looks good. That one looks good. Okay. Looks good. So now we can click step 4. Okay, step 4 says make a single copy of this grouping. So if we click where it's pointing, we can see that rather than the first 3 steps where each thing was individually grouped, I just want to make a copy of everything that's already grouped, so I don't have to reselect everything. Your instructor is so nice for doing that. You can also see that we've got a door back here, and then another little grouping. But we're just going to make a single copy of this grouping. So that means we're going to do move control for copy, and we're not going to use X or / because those are for multiple copies. All right. So we need to get into edit mode of this grouping's objects, select only the aluminum slats and pavers, so everything except the column. Activate the copy command, select an endpoint on the far left of the object, such as where the pavers and column connect. So that would be this area. Copy the objects left along the red axis, click an endpoint on the column to end the copy. Get out of edit mode of the grouping, get out of your command, and then save. All right, got that? Clear as mud? We'll do it together. So we'll get into edit mode. Remember how we get into edit mode? It's a couple of different ways. We can double click on this grouping anywhere inside this blue box. If I double click outside the blue box, that's not going to do anything for me. So I need to double click somewhere inside this blue box. What's the other way I can get into edit mode when I come back out? I can right click on this grouping. Remember that my cursor has to be actually on something inside the grouping. So it helps if it's already selected. Right click and choose edit group. And then I need to choose everything except the column. So I'm going to do a left to right bounding box. Pick up everything. Is my column selected? No, because it's not all lit up with blue like everything else over here is, okay? So activate the copy command, move plus control, select an endpoint on the far left of the object, such as where the pavers and column connect. So I'm gonna grab this little endpoint right here. Click. Then I am going to copy the objects left along the red axis. So I need to move my mouse left, lock in my red axis with the right arrow key, and I'm going to pan over and click an endpoint on the column to end the copy. Hit the space bar to get out of my command. Hit escape to get out of edit mode. I'm going to look and make sure that that copied correctly. Looks good. And then I'm going to save my model. All right, so let's move on to step 5. Create multiple copies of this grouping. So if I click on this, sure enough, all of this is grouped together. Select the group of 5 objects. Do not get into edit mode. Activate the copy tool. Click the column in the grouping at the bottom far left. So over here. Move your mouse to the left and lock in the red axis. Click the endpoint of the column marker line that lines up with where you clicked on the column. So again, we're using a reference point of this column to use to click over here. Immediately type 3/ and hit enter. So we're making 3 copies. You should have 3 copies of the grouping. Double check the columns line up with the column markers. Lovely. So I have selected it. So activate the copy tool. M for move, Control for copy. Click the column. Edit endpoint, bottom left. Creature of habit here. Click. Move my mouse to the left. Lock in the red axis. And then I'm going to pan over to that same exact point on this little marker, so the bottom left. Click, and immediately type in 3/. Well, wait, what happened? Well, my instructions weren't 100% clear what it meant, because I wanted you to have a mistake so you would learn from the mistake. What you need to do is when you move your mouse to the left, remember with this 3/ that it creates copies from the beginning and end point. It creates the copies in the middle, in between. So after we click here, we activate our move copy command, click our left endpoint, lock in our red axis. We need to move all the way to the end of this section. Remember? Know what I'm talking about? And click that outline and type in 3/ and enter. So that way we have our beginning point, our end point, and copies in between that are equally spaced between the two. And we're going to save. How we doing? All right, let's move on to step 6. We'll click the step 6 scene tab. Without instruction, make 5 multiple copies of this grouping along this side of the fence on the green axis to the right. So I am giving you autonomy here to use either the X or the Y for using your multiple copies. So why don't you pause this recording and try it out using either the X or the / to create 5 multiple copies. Ready, go if you haven't already gone. I was pausing for effect. All right, so what I'm going to do is I am going to use the X. So that means that I will create one right next to my copy, and I'll have a bunch of little copies after it. If you did the /, that's fantastic. All right, I have my object selected, M for move, Control for copy, click my left bottom endpoint, lock in my green axis because I'm copying along the green. You can see that I'm actually on the green, so that helps. Click the left arrow key to lock that in. I'm going to click the bottom left of this rectangle outline and immediately type 5x, enter, spacebar to get out of my command. Let's zoom out. Looks good. Gonna save. I have clicked on step 7A here on my scene tab, so go ahead and click that one. Get a drink of water, get a drink of wine, because this is the hardest part of this exercise. We are going to create the driveway gate. Now, normally I say read through all of the instructions, but there's so much going on in 7A and 7B that I want us to just do it as we read. So we're working with this open area. We're going to modify these slats to make a gate. Behind here you can see an image of what it's going to look like when we're done. So let us begin. Delete the cubozoid in this area only. So we'll delete this cubozoid of papers. Delete one set of aluminum horizontal slats, the red slats. So I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of this right side. I selected it and I clicked delete on my keyboard. Get into edit mode of the remaining set of aluminum horizontal slats. So there's two ways I can get into edit mode, as we know. I can context click or right click on this grouping and choose edit group. Or I could also double click on the grouping. I know I'm in edit mode because everything else is faded out except for these slats. I've got this dotted bounding box around the group. All right. So then it says select all of the slat components using a bounding box, context click and choose make unique. So we can just do a huge bounding box because when we are in edit mode, the only thing it's going to pick up is anything in this grouping or this component that I am editing. So even if I do the right to left bounding box that picks up everything, you know, even you hit just the tiniest little bit and it should pick up everything in its path. Because you're in edit mode, it's not going to pick up anything that's outside of this grouping. Another reason why we do groups and components. So I've selected all of these slats. I'm going to context click on them and choose make unique. Remember when we're working with components that everything is tied to each other that has been copied from each other. So here was my original set of slats over here way back on step 1. And we copied, I guess that was step 2, we copied all of these over. So anything that changes to any of these slats that were copied will change all of these slats. Well, because we did this bounding box and we made them all unique, these are all going to change. I guess you could say these will kind of cut themselves off. Not kind of, they will. They'll cut themselves off from the rest of the aluminum slats that we've copied around. Now, if we wanted to just change one of these slats, we would choose just that one slat we want to change and make that one unique. And then we can do whatever we want to this one and it will change by itself. But we want all of these slats to change together the same exact way. We want all of them to be the same length and all of the same color so we can make these all unique together. If we wanted, say, every other one to be a different color and a different length, then we could select every other one, make those unique, and then every other slat will change the same way, whether it be push-pulled inward or a different color or something like that. So that's what make unique is really about. We're cutting it off from the rest of the aluminum slats here. But we want all of these slats in this grouping to change together. So we're going to make them unique. Now, why didn't we just make this group unique? Before we got into edit mode, why didn't we make this unique? We'll try that. If you already made them unique, it's not going to work. But if you context click on the group itself, we can edit the group, we can explode it, we can make it a component, but we don't have the option to make unique. That's because groups, you don't need to make unique because they don't have the properties that a component has in order to tie everything all together and change it all together at once. So we can only edit this group, select all the slats, and make all of these components unique. we get that option to make unique only when something is a component and only when it's tied to other things. For instance, if I choose make unique now, I can go back and try to make it unique again, but I no longer get that make unique option. So we have done that part. That was a really long explanation. So we're on step E. Get into edit mode of one of the slats. Push pull that slat out 7 3/4 inches. Type 7 space 3/4 enter. So we want all of these slats to now change, but we only need to change one since they're components tied to each other. So we are going to orbit around and find the face that we want to push pull. So that would be this one. Select the face, P for push pull, click an endpoint, and move our mouse in the direction we want to go. So now it needs to come out 7 3/4 inches. There are two different ways to type this. We can type 7 space 3/4 and hit enter. If you remember how to do that in decimal form, thinking back to the second day of class, we can type 7.75 and hit enter. So it saves us a little bit of a step. All right, spacebar to get out of our command. Then it says get out of edit mode. So we're going to hit escape once. If we hit escape again, or we click on the modeling window twice, then we're going to get out of edit mode of both the component grouping and the grouping itself. So if I hit escape again, then I'm completely out of edit mode. But I don't want to be completely out of edit mode. I want to be able to select various slats in here one at a time. I don't want to be in edit mode of the slats themselves. I want to be able to select the various groupings here, or the components. So my instructions say, get out of edit mode. Make 4 copies of the last slat equal distances apart. Copy down on the blue axis and use previous slats as references for distance. So think about that for a minute. I want to copy this bottom slat down on the blue axis. I need to make 4 copies of it, but I need it to be the exact same distance as the bottom slat to the one above it, and the one above it to the one above it, the one above it to the one above it. So think about that for a second. How do I do that? Okay, if you want to go ahead and do it on your own, or you already did, I love it. I'm going to show you how I would do it. So I want to copy this bottom one, and I'm going to use the one just above it as reference. So I'm going to use my endpoints. So I've selected the one I'm going to copy. I'm going to hit move, control for copy. I'm going to select the endpoint up here, the slat above it, as a reference. I'm going to lock in my blue axis, and I'm going to click the exact same endpoint that I clicked on the one above to my original copy. So that tells me the distance from the top to the other top I want my copies to have. Then I'm going to click. I need to have 4 copies, so I am going to immediately type 4x, enter. Spacebar to get out of my command. I'm going to get out of edit mode, and I'm going to save. All right. Now we are going to context click the gray vertical slat. So that's this guy right here. And I'm going to make it unique. So all of these various slats, vertical slats, across my entire model are all components tied to each other. But that tells me if I need to make it unique, that this slat is somehow going to be different than the rest of them. So I'm going to right click or context click right on it. Remember, your cursor has to be on the object, and choose make unique. if I think, oh my gosh, did I make that unique? I can't remember. Well, if you context click on it, make unique is already grayed out. So that means, sure enough, you did make it unique. Bravo. So now we need to get in edit mode of the vertical slat, push pull down from the bottom 1 foot 10 and 3/4. And this tells us one way to get that increment. 1 foot 10 space 3/4 enter, and then we'll get out of edit mode. So let's first get into edit mode. And you might need to move. In fact, you will need to move so you're out of the way of this, of the instructions. So we'll just move it up a little bit. We'll pan up. We didn't move it up, we panned up. And get into edit mode. So I'm going to double click. I'm going to select this face at the bottom here. P for push pull. Click an endpoint. Let go. And it needs to come down 1 foot 10 and 3/4 inches. I'm going to do that a little bit easier way than the fractions. I'm going to hit 1 apostrophe. Keep an eye on your VCB. 10.75. This is another way to type 1 foot 10 inches and 3/4 inches. I didn't say that right. 1 foot 10 and 3/4 inches. Remember, we don't have to do the inch marks because SketchUp defaults to inches, but we do have to do the foot mark, which we did. Oops, I moved my mouse, so I changed it. 1 foot 10.75. Enter. Spacebar to get out of my command. And then it says to get out of edit mode, so I'm going to click my modeling window and save. All right, let's click step 7B. Move the vertical slat so it is just to the right of the horizontal slats. The top of it should line up with the top of your horizontal slats. The left side should line up with the right side of your horizontal slats. All right, so I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to select my vertical slat and move, hit an endpoint or click an endpoint, move along my red axis. I'm going to lock it in and click just to the right of the horizontal posts. Click, spacebar. Looks like my top lines up, and I know my right side lines up because I clicked endpoint. And there we go. All right, so let's move on to the next step. In edit mode of the vertical slat, push pull from the top up 1 1/4 inch. So it is just above the horizontal slats. Then I'm going to push pull the back face of the slat back so it meets up with the thickness of the aluminum horizontal slats. All right, so first things first, 1 1/4 inch up. So zoom in, double click to get into edit mode, select the face, P for push pull, click an endpoint and move your mouse up and type 1.25. So that's 1 1/4 inches and hit enter. Or you could do it the fractional way of 1 space 1/4 enter. So two different ways to do something. A spacebar to get off my command. Now I still want to be in the push pull command, but I need to hit spacebar so I get my select tool, orbit around to the back of this slat to select it. So please never select an object with your push-pull tool, okay? You'll only set yourself up to fail. Use your select tool and then hit P for push-pull. And we need the thickness, oh, sorry, my orbit is off a little bit. We need the thickness of this aluminum post, the vertical one, excuse me, to be as thick as your horizontal posts. Got my face selected, P for push pull, click an endpoint, and then click the back endpoint of this horizontal post. Click, spacebar to get out of my command, get out of edit mode, and save. We're almost done, you guys. I'm going to move this so I can, not moving, I'm panning pan so I can see what I'm doing next. Make a single copy of the horizontal slats group and the vertical post. Copy them along the red axis. Alright, so I'm going to copy them along the red axis. Now, I have to use a little bit of thinking here because it doesn't tell me where to copy them to. So if I'm looking at the image back here, I'm just going to have one copy of the slats and the vertical post right next to each other. So that's all I need to do. Maybe I could even copy them all the way over so it touches this column. So let's try that. I'm going to select both of those objects. Select one, hold down the shift key, select the other, move, control for copy, and select an endpoint. Now I'm not going to choose my left, because if I choose my left, then I won't know where to end over here. So this time I'm going to choose my right, so I know to end at this point. I mean, know to end on the column. I hope you're picking up what I'm putting down. Alright, click, move my mouse in the direction I want to copy, lock in my red axis, and click an endpoint over here where I want to stop. Click. Spacebar to get off my command. Now don't click your modeling window because the next part says keep your copy selected. So they're still selected. Context click on them and choose flip along red direction. So remember when we context click, we want our cursor to be right on an object. So I'm going to context click and choose flip along red direction. Look at that. I created a mirror copy. Pretty cool. This will create a mirror image. Why, yes it did. In the layers dialog box in the default tray, check the visibility box next to layer step 7 driveway gate. So over here in my default tray, I have my layers. Find your layers panel here. I'm going to move these so you can see. There we go. The visible box. So we need to find the layer called step 7 driveway gate. Here she is. And next to her, underneath the visible column, there's no checkbox. So if I click that box, I've got some pieces to this driveway gate that I don't have to create. Well, that's lovely. Step Q says move all the objects you created in step 7. So that's the horizontal slats and the vertical slats. So they are centered on the driveway gate pieces. So that would be these end pieces. So I think what I need to do is I need to move this horizontal and this vertical over, and this horizontal and this vertical over, so they look just like this image back here. I think the easiest way to do this is to select them both, and I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to move this part over along the red axis so it lines up with this vertical, with this driveway gate piece that we just turned on or turned visible in the default tray. Do you see how I did that? So I selected the pieces I want to move. So I held down shift key while I grabbed the other one, and then I zoomed in, M for move, and I want to get an endpoint, but I can't quite get all of it. It's kind of stuck in here. See if I zoom out if you can see. Oh, it's not stuck in there quite enough. All right, so I'm going to click this intersection point. I'm going to lock in my red axis so I make sure I don't move this guy. I'm going to click to where I get this endpoint, and then I'm going to can reach this endpoint part of the slat. So I'm going to click that, lock in my red axis, and then click an endpoint on my driveway gate piece. All right, I'm going to go over to the other side and do the exact same thing, because then these will meet in the middle. So I'm going to select this vertical slat, hold down my shift key to get the horizontal ones, zoom in because I want all of this redness to be just against the black driveway gate piece. Click, lock in my red, click an endpoint, lock in my red, and click. There we go. Let's see how it looks in the middle. Beautiful. Look what we did. We are amazing. So that's it for step 7. So now, final step, click this button, which zooms extents, and then we're going to save. Oh, we need to zoom extents. All right. So let's go ahead and save. And those of you who are watching this video get a little bit of a freebie, because remember how I said every single thing in your model needs to be a group or component? Well, you've got a whole bunch of different groups and components all the way throughout here, but you want everything in your model to be grouped together when you are all done. So if you do this next part, you get 5 points extra credit. What I want you to do is to do a control A for all, or Command A if you're on your Mac. Control A, and that picks up everything in your model that's visible right now. So anything over here in your layers panel that's not visible is not getting picked up, but just what's visible right now. Hopefully it's only what you see in my window as well. We're going to context click on any one of these pieces that's highlighted blue. Everything should be highlighted blue. And choose Make Group. We're going to click this final step again. And your image is turned off, but I forgot to turn mine off, so just ignore that. Hit Zoom Extents up here. This is something you should always do right before you save and upload. We're going to save. If you click on it once, you can see that all of that is grouped together. That's what we want. Go ahead and save and upload to D2L. Good job.